Good afternoon, everyone. Bill Phillips from the Prince George Daily News here, and I have with me today NDP candidates Audrey Mckinnon and Cory Longley. Audrey, of course, is running in Cariboo-Prince George, and Cory in Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies, which is probably one of the longest names in the entire country. So let's just get right into it. Let's start with Audrey. Tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you come to be here and why you've decided to enter politics.
That's the big main question everybody asks. And there's so many. What's that, Bill?
Momentary lapse of reason.
No, I don't think so. I think that it's a completely reasonable thing to do, and I'm actually really excited to be doing it. And I have been planning for it for the last year or so. So it's given me some time to come to terms with what I'm up for, what this task is going to be. But as for who I am, Audrey Mckinnon. I was formerly a CBC radio broadcaster, host and reporter. Some of you might remember me from there. And I currently work at Cariboo County Tribal Council in their communications department. They serve 7 First Nations, some of them overlapping with the riding, and many of them having members here in Prince George as well. Yeah, I've been pretty open about my background. I think it's important not to just talk about our jobs, but who we are as people and the experiences that we've had. And one of the experiences that I bring to the table is lived experience of living in poverty with my son as a single parent. Went through some really difficult times for quite a while, and have pushed really hard to get where I am, and have been very lucky to receive a lot of help from different people, sometimes in small ways, but very meaningful. And really that's what has led me to doing this. Is I think it's so important to be of service and to give back. And I think this is probably the most meaningful way that I can serve this riding, is to represent the riding in Parliament. And the other part of that is that I currently don't feel represented in this riding, and I think a lot of people feel that way as well. I think that we deserve to have a member of Parliament who can say Black Lives Matter, and who can say, what Canada has done to Indigenous peoples was genocide, and can say that climate change is human caused. I want somebody who can represent me, and I'm willing to step up and do this. I'm going to make a lot of noise if I get into Parliament, and I think that's what we need for this riding.
Right. Cory, give us a little bit about your background and why you decided to enter the race in what's probably one of the toughest races for anyone other than a Conservative.
No kidding, hey? My name's Cory Grizz Longley. That's what you're going to see on the ballot. So I'd appreciate it if you'd make your X beside that one. I'm a plumber gas fitter by trade. I spent many years in broadcasting, as Audrey did. She's awesome. The reason that I'm running is because I don't feel represented. As you can see, I'm wearing my Block by Bob t-shirt. Now, the MP who is looking for his job again, who's running, I am decided to apply for that job alongside him. What do I bring to this? I promise you right now, solemnly, that I will never block a member of this riding that wants to talk to me as your representative in Ottawa. That's your job, man. Out of all the things that you have to do, the number one job is listening. He is not doing that. In fact, he will turn his heel and he will walk away from someone who might have a differing opinion, or wants to provide nuance, or wants to be understood and heard. And I commit right now to listen to everybody in my riding. That's one of the biggest reasons that I decided to enter this fray, because let's be honest, as you said, this riding, I've had Conservative members come up to me and say that they could have a hay bale wearing a cowboy hat and a Conservative pin, and they would get elected over me. Now, I think they were trying to insult me, but I think what it really ends up doing is kind of insulting Conservative followers. that you would think that these people are just hay bales out there, that they're just votes to be harvested because of who you are. This is an opportunity for our former MP to actually earn those votes. And I would like to be a viable option for the people that don't think he's doing the job, that don't think that he has earned his money. Because also talking to other conservative members around here, I would always ask them, you have a business, you've hired an employee. If you had hired them and they had worked for you for 4 years, but they didn't do a single thing that you asked them to do, would you rehire them? That's a serious question. Of course you wouldn't. You want productivity, you want accountability, you want people that are working for you, that you're paying to do this job to bring you results. What have we seen so far from our MP, the one that was sitting there? Well, he's basically told Indigenous people that if they want to stay safe, they should stay on the reserve to not get murdered on the highway of tears. This is his position. He needs to be answerable for that. Our MP, our current or past MP, has told me by the way that he votes in the House of Parliament that my family needs to be converted. Members of my family need to be converted. Unacceptable. I don't know how many people actually understand what's involved with conversion therapy, aversion therapy. This is brutal torture. And our MP wants to keep that going. This speaks to who he is. Everybody always says, oh, he's a nice guy. Really? Nice guys that condone torture. Nice guys that don't actually come up with a solution to help with poverty, to ensure that everybody, not just Indigenous people, are not getting kidnapped and murdered on a highway in northern British Columbia. This guy needs to shake his head, and we as voters who want to hold these people accountable need to rethink our vote for this. I promise right now that these will be things I will be tackling, and I'll be tackling them at the federal level. And that means I'll be building bridges with the provincial government and with municipalities and ensuring that they have the resources they need to tackle these problems. Not just playing whack-a-mole where my head only pops up every 4 years when I want your vote, or in this case, only every 2 years.
Just for a point of reference, the t-shirt Blocked by Bob, for those who don't know, there is a hashtag group out there. I shouldn't say it's a group, but there is a hashtag thing on Twitter that gets a bit of following, and that MP Bob Zimmer has a habit of blocking people on Twitter that he doesn't want to respond to. That's where the hashtag Blocked by Bob comes from.
Absolutely, and it's funny because that number of that little group is not so little anymore.
Yeah, and the other item there, when they talk about conversion therapy, when the vote came before the House of Commons, Bob Zimmer was one of the, I think there was 8 or something like that, that did not support the banning of conversion therapy. But let's get back to Audrey for a minute. What do you look in Cariboo-Prince George? You're going up against a seasoned politician in Todd Doherty. I suppose he's seasoned now. He's been around for a while, and
doing it for 6 years.
Yeah, and last time he got over 50% of the vote. So, how do you? It's a tough road. How do you think that you can break that juggernaut of like Cory was talking about? You can run a hay bale if they're conservative and win.
And I agree with Cory that that's really unfair to conservative voters. Actually, it's very insulting to say that that people who vote conservative aren't critical thinkers, because that's absolutely not true. But I will say that the NDP voters are here. They're in Prince George, and I think we have a really in Cariboo-Prince George. I think we have a really unique riding. If you look at the vote share year after year, you see that bounce around quite a bit, and people kind of they go from one party to the other. What I'm seeing on the doorstep is a lot of people mulling over 2 options, the NDP or the Conservatives. And the NDP really does have a good shot at flipping this riding orange this time. And I think that right now we're in a unique time as well. 6 years ago when Todd was first elected, we were talking about very different issues, and we were seeing very different issues in our community. But right now what we're seeing is a breakdown of a lot of these things that we haven't seen action on. And we haven't seen action from Todd on these either, because that's the thing, is he's seasoned, he's been there for 6 years, but what has he done? Because I've seen visibly growing poverty in this community. I've seen a continuance of thousands of people dying of drug toxicity and drug overdose. And we have the highest rate of that here in northern BC. And that has not gone away through magic or through just doing nothing. We need somebody who's able to advocate for that. As well, we're seeing the housing crisis finally appear up in northern BC as well, and in central BC. And I mean, I didn't think that it was going to, I thought that that was, something that was only going to be in larger city centers. Didn't expect to see it starting to hit up here. But people are talking about different issues now. COVID has really expanded that wealth gap and put us into a position where we're looking at our lives and we're reevaluating and thinking, is this the way that we are going to move forward? We're in the middle of a climate crisis, and our MP cannot publicly say that climate change is human caused. That is problematic. How are you supposed to lead if you cannot even say that out loud? So how can I take this riding? How am I tackling this big riding? I think just trying to get out there and talk to as many people as possible and let them know and say, I hear this as well, what Cory said. He's a nice guy. I don't know how many nice guys are sitting in Parliament making $185,000 just for a year, just for being nice guys. If I get elected, I'm going to work. I'm going to fight for change. I'm going to fight for the environment. I'm going to fight for social change. I'm going to fight for drug users and for people's lives. I'm going to fight for the unhoused. I'm going to fight for affordability, and I'm not going to be quiet. So I think that answers your question. I'm not about to be quiet about this. I've got work to do, and I'm really tired of waiting for somebody else to do it. And it's apparent to me after 6 years, it's not going to happen with Todd Doherty.
Nope.
So one of the things that you touched on it there briefly, but one of the things that amazed me in this campaign, and I'll ask both of you or either of you, is why hasn't the climate crisis now, we don't call it climate change anymore, why isn't that front and center in this campaign?
In terms of whose campaign, I think it is front and center.
I think it is for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is for us. Yep.
Right
it is absolutely. It's one of my top priorities, and it is hard because every time somebody asks what my top priorities are, I know there are so many problems to solve. How do you pick one? But the fact is that climate justice is social justice. We don't have a future without a green earth, and I during that heat wave, I had some of the most, fearful thoughts for my son growing up in this world and what that's going to look like. This is not negotiable. We cannot negotiate with the environment like we've been trying to do, like the Liberal government has been trying to do. We need to take firm action, and we need to do it yesterday. And I think that it has been front and center in our campaigns.
Right on. So Cory, maybe I'll just get you to elaborate a little bit then. So what is the NDP plan on climate? What an NDP government, what will you guys do to immediately deal with this?
Okay, so here's a couple things. I actually had a phone call from a constituent not too long ago, and they're involved in their church. They're concerned about all kinds of things, and it was interesting to see that in British Columbia, there's a coalition of church groups that are getting together, and they are pro-environment. They understand that the Garden of Eden right now is on fire, right? So that tells you that it is shifting. I think that we're going to see more. Look at the rise of the Greens provincially. Now, do I agree with the Greens on everything? No, but we do have certain points in the NDP where we have a huge crossover. The problem with the Greens is that they're not going to be able to get it done. They have some issues of their own. And it's amazing. If you take the time to go to the NDP website and you download that 215-page document, Jugmeat is clear. We are going to be tackling all of the benchmarks that Justin Trudeau has not even bothered to try to meet. A lot of these things that could have been done in Parliament with the support of the NDP. We were there to push these guys to make those commitments. I'll tell you right now, when the Trudeau government decided to buy a pipeline, they basically had told everybody that they are no longer a centrist party. This is a party that doesn't believe in climate change. This is a party that doesn't give a crap about your kids' future or your grandkids' future, because people that do don't buy pipelines. You look at O'Toole and what he's doing right now, the idea that he could magically bring another pipeline back to life. How does that help anybody? It doesn't. What that does is it allows a system where Canada can make whatever climate commitment changes they want with those two parties that have ruled almost since Confederation, actually have ruled since Confederation. And then what they'll do is they'll go into the back room and they will change the budget line so that, oh, hey, guess what? All the carbon capture that we send offshore is not counted against us. Right? There needs to be accountability. And that means that we need to actually tackle these things, not just on a budget line, but of course, also in the real world. And I believe strongly that the NDP is the party to do that.
Right on. So getting back to Audrey, of course we touched on climate a little bit. So other than that, what are your top priorities? Especially referring close to or more specific to Cariboo-Prince George.
Yeah.
What are some of the local issues? I know all these others on climate and housing, like you mentioned, they're all kind of global issues in this. But are there local issues that you're looking at that
those are the local issues? We're part of that, and it is really, this is where representation really matters too, because how it presents itself in Cariboo-Prince George might be different than how it's presenting itself in Ottawa or somewhere else in Ontario or something like that. So this is where it's really important that we have a member of parliament who's able to actually, speak with constituents in between and bring back information and understand exactly where things are working and where they're not, and take that information back to parliament to advocate for those in these plans. Because yes, housing is a local issue. And poverty is a local issue, and the drug crisis are local issues, and so is climate change. They're all local issues. But how do those fit into our situation here in Cariboo-Prince George? If we think about the environment, for instance, one of the things we talk about at the NDP is a just transition away from fossil fuels, and that means we're going to kick that addiction that we have to fossil fuels, but we're going to make sure that people who are relying on an income from fossil fuels, we're going to make sure that they have some place to go, that they're able to continue to provide for their families, put food on the table, because that's why they're doing what they do. But we have to think about, as we're making a just transition, for instance, I was down in Williams Lake and speaking with some farmers down there, and they're saying, you want to transition away from fossil fuels, but what do we do with our farm equipment that we rely on? They are fossil fuel guzzlers, and we cannot go back to horse and carriage, So thinking about how that fits in and making sure that those voices are heard in parliament, that's really where the role of an MP should come in. And I hear housing on so many doorsteps. I think people are surprised, like I said, that it's coming here. And I just don't think that we can gloss over the level of poverty that we're seeing here. These are, I don't know how else to say it. These global issues are local issues. They're hitting us here. They're affecting us here. They present specifically. We have less resources in terms of medical professionals and retaining those. So how does that fit into the big piece of the big puzzle when we go back to parliament and they're saying, here, we've got a solution for this? Where's the parliamentarian who's going to be there and say, that's great, but how are we going to make sure that people in Cariboo-Prince George have access to that too? Because we have this additional barrier of the fact that we already have a hard time attracting and retaining medical professionals. And I'm thinking about, mental health care, because that's something in our platform as well, right? But if we're going to have universal mental health care, it's only universal if we also have those healthcare professionals here in this part of the riding. So.
Absolutely. And Audrey just talked a little bit about, moving away from fossil fuels, Cory. How do you present that argument in your riding, which has a lot of oil and gas companies in there, and a lot of people are employed by oil and gas? How do you promote that?
How do I rationalize that? Well, it's simple.
Rationalize it. How do you get people to vote for you when you're when that's your how do you sell that to the people there?
It's a hard sell, right? What was interesting is when radio first came about, oh my God, what's going to happen to newspapers? When television came about, oh my God, what's going to happen to radio? When the telegraph was the only way that we could communicate. Those are all things that are technology, and we've moved forward from where we were, and things are better now when the internet works here in Prince George. So the simple argument to make here is it's not a question of when is this change going to come. It's going to come. Everybody understands that. That's why you have big companies like Encana, when they were called Encana, selling off fields and smaller guys going in there to buy them up. That's why you see a shift change on the national boardrooms, because let's face it, these large multinational companies don't give two craps about you or the oiled worker, because if they did, they would have been in those convoys to Ottawa, and they were not. It was the meat and potato guy, the guy who's got the job there that's trying to put the bread on his table, that were at those protests. And when you show them the opportunities that are going to become available with new technology, it's not there yet, but it will be. It's like everything else. It takes time. Remediation of old orphaned well sites is a really good way to look at it. If you look at the progress being made by John Horgan's BC NDP here, that has been a big success for them. And it speaks to environment in that these companies care about you so much, they're willing to leave a giant mess, a toxic mess behind without paying to clean it up or remediate it. So who's left holding the bag on that one? The taxpayers. I don't know if you were there for the big wind spill in 2010, because there wasn't one. Wind spills don't happen. Oil spills happen all the time. Do you remember when we had too much sun? Oh wait, that didn't happen because the sun is there. It's dependable. What we need to do is shift our thinking a little bit, of a paradigm shift here, to show people that there are safe alternatives. Are they going to be a panacea? No, they're probably not. But incrementally, we're going to see change, and that's where we're going to go anyway. So what's the old proverb? If it's a windy day, you build a windmill. You take advantage of that. You know the change is coming. This is the time when we should be nationally, with an NDP government, looking at retraining, looking at really good paying jobs that help us to actually harness the environment that we're in without harming it. And I think that Jugmeat has a really good plan for that. I've certainly bought into it.
So what do you think the NDP's chances are in this election to A, form government, to B, be the opposition, or C, hold the balance of power in a minority government? Where do you think you're going to end up?
Are you asking me? Or okay,
yeah,
well, I'll jump right in.
You can have this one, Grizz.
Okay, cool. Here's what I'm looking at. I like polls because it's kind of a vanity thing. You can see how well your team is doing. It doesn't really mean anything. If everybody has instantly forgotten what just happened in Nova Scotia, or when Rachel Notley got in Alberta, polls really kind of don't tell the whole story. But what you are seeing, I believe, is an upswell, a surge, an orange tsunami. I believe that's what's happening right now. And I was lucky enough to see that happen in BC during the last provincial election. Nobody thought John would get a majority government. Well, maybe they'll get a few more seats, but boom. Is that what we're going to see across Canada? Man, I'm sure hoping so. But because that one person that called the election, that Justy Trudeau guy, 2015 was supposed to be the last one where we had a first past the post. Did we get that? No, because he lied to us. He lied to us. If we had a system of proportional representation, this election would look very, very different in the polling. I'll tell you that right now. I really see strong movement for the NDP. Right now, I think we're around 24%, something like that. If we can get up to around 27 to 28, I think that we're going to see some real big changes coming, surprising big changes, like Notley change. That's the kind of thing I'm looking forward to. You have all these people that are talking about making your vote count, right? How do I do that strategically? How do I do that? Like it's some kind of brain fart that you have to figure out on your own. Here's how to make a difference. And here's how to make your vote count. Vote with this. Vote with this. What is going to give you the change that you need to see? We've only had 2 governments in power since Confederation in this country, and both of those parties have lied to you all the time. All I'm asking for is you give us a chance. Just give us a test run. Let us do an interview of 4 years. If you don't like what you're seeing, you can always go back to the same old, but at least give these young people a chance for survival, a chance for them to see a change in their lifetime. I'm 51 years old, and it was interesting. I actually went back and tried to figure out what the oldest liberal promise was that was made, and it's 51 years old. It was electoral reform. Both of my kids have aged out of $10 a day daycare. My son is 9 and my daughter is 12. If you're looking for change, you need to be voting for the NDP because we have your backs. The other parties don't. They'll just keep fibbing to you and making stuff up.
And you know what, Bill, the goal is to form government, and I leave it up to the pundits to analyze, what the chances are of that, the pollsters and all that. But we know that these things can go in all sorts of different directions. We can see the polls doing this right now, and as public opinion is changing, and it's going to continue to go in all sorts of directions. The most important thing that we can do is stay true to ourselves. I think that Grizz and I both have that in common, that we are here for this reason because we want to make a difference for people. We care about human beings. We don't want to see anybody left behind. That is all I'm focused on, is making sure that people can see who I am, and how I'm best able to represent them, and how that pans out in terms of whether we form government, whether I get elected. That's not up to me. That's out of my hands. I'm just doing my best.
Yeah, Audrey hits it right on the head there. The other thing to think about too, and I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it because it's history and some people forget. In Canada, where we've had the most progressive occurrences happen, like universal healthcare, which has never really been universal, but it could be if you vote NDP, that's happened during a minority government. Will the NDP hold the balance of power? That's hard to say. Neither one of the other national leaders have decided who they're going to throw their support behind if it does come to that. And I think what we're seeing here is the reticence to do that is because we all know in our heart that if you scratch a liberal, you've got a conservative, because they are beholden to each other. They have all their board members on all these rich, big mega companies that ultimately are the ones that play the tune that they dance to. The NDP bends the knee to no one. We are looking out for our constituents. We are looking out for Canadians. And again, we have your back. We don't owe money or favors to Husky. We don't owe money or favors to the large hospitals. We don't. We look after the workers. We look after the people that are the ones doing the work. And that's why we're your best bet, because we represent you.
Yeah. Audrey, go to you for a minute, just switching topics here a little bit. You have I'd say tougher road, but a more interesting road in that Garth Frizzell has come forward as a Liberal candidate, well known in Prince George, been a city councillor for years. So do you fear, or how do you deal with I can imagine, I guess, you'd say a strong Liberal candidate as well in your riding? And I go back to 2015 when I think between Todd and Tracy Caligaros and Trent Derrick, the difference was like 4 or 5 percentage points between all three.
Right. Yeah, that was the year we came really close in that year. Actually, I think that we were on track to win that election. The NDP was on track to win it about a week before the election happened, and that's why I'm saying that things can be so volatile. I can't even focus on that really, Bill. Like, yes, Garth is an experienced politician. I bring something completely different to the table. People are going to pick who they want to represent them, and I just can't focus on whether that's going to impact people voting for me or not. I just want to get out there and let people know who I am and let them know that I have their best interests in mind. And that is 100% what's on my mind. I'm not, will the vote be, I think what you're hinting at is vote splitting. And I think that's a myth. Yeah. vote splitting, votes don't get split, one vote per person, and
Yeah.
and the fact is that the Liberal Party isn't a progressive party, and I think that in 2015 there was kind of this myth and this belief that maybe it could be a progressive party because Justin Trudeau hadn't been tested and people were believing what he was spinning. And it looked pretty forward. We're in a totally different year now. People don't have that faith in Justin Trudeau that they had in 2015. They know better because he promises the same things every election and then doesn't deliver them. And actually, this time he didn't even bother to promise some of them. He just kind of like pretended some of those promises never existed. So I think people are a lot wiser about what the Liberal Party is about this election than they were in 2015. But like I said, I have to stay focused on what I think is best for this riding, based on what I'm hearing, and I believe that's the NDP.
Cory, just staying on the Liberals and the election call, I guess this is the election that nobody wanted, and nobody knows why we're having. So what are your thoughts on why we're having this election, and what does that say about the Liberal government?
Well, I think that the polls are showing what it says about the Liberal government. I'm not a pundit either, although I like to pretend to be one. But I will tell you this: in Prince George, if you're going to vote for somebody, I wouldn't be voting for the Liberal candidate in Audrey's riding, that's for sure. Yeah, he's a long-standing politician. Look what he's done municipally. That's what I would be looking at, because he has a record. He needs to be held accounted. Just because you're shifting the level of government that you're running from, you have a history, sir, and you should be held accountable by the voters of that. Now, I don't know if the riding needs another parkade, but if I was a person and I was looking at someone who was handling the finances and supposed to be looking over things municipally, and you had some issues going on, I might give that serious pause. I would also look at a Conservative that is very close to getting their pension. Those are the questions that I would be asking, because sometimes you can be a little bit cynical. I always try to punch up. I don't want to punch down. That's not how we run at the NDP. We care about people and we put them first. The reason that the Liberals called the snap election right now, let's be honest, they thought they'd get a majority. That's the only reason. Because if the Liberals did give a damn about any of the people living in the ridings, they would have continued to work collaboratively with the one party that has pushed for all of the benefits that we've seen through this 100-year in a time pandemic. We would not be, you talk about poverty. There are people in this riding right now that would not be able to afford rent if Jagmeet Singh and the NDP had not pushed for a bigger CERB, had not pushed for wage supplements, all of those kinds of things. You only have to look at the record, folks, to see who's working for you in Ottawa. And it's not the Liberals. They called a vanity election to get a majority just so that they could pay off more of their rich buddies. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm. Audrey, you wanted to add to that, or?
Well, what's the question? Why the Liberals called the election? He's right. They called an election because Justin Trudeau saw this maybe as his last window to try and snag a little bit more power. He was wrong. It's not going to happen. People have caught on, and they're tired of his record. And Cory's right too. This has been, it bothers me. I look closely at the voting records. I look closely at the voting record of our current MP, and I don't like the way he's voting. Do people know he voted against pharmacare? Do people know he didn't show up to support dental care? Do people know he voted against UNDRIP? Do people know he voted in favor of a bill that threatens reproductive rights? He did all those things, and we have to look at the records. We have to look at that for the Liberals too, because the Conservatives and Liberals vote together on all of those issues. They vote together. They're essentially the same party. I like to call the Liberals three Conservatives in a trench coat, because they show up with their promises, but when they're in Parliament, when we just look at those voting records, we have to hold people accountable. These are people who are supposed to represent us, and so I know that everybody's out talking about platforms and everything, but we need to look at the records. These are three tested parties. And you can see who the NDP is looking out for, and that's everybody. And you can see who the Liberals and Conservatives are looking out for, and they're looking out for their wealthy cronies. And that's exactly, and you know, they're power hungry. That's why Justin Trudeau called an election. He wanted more power. He's going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll invoke comments from a former Liberal candidate in your riding, Audrey, Tracy Calagaros.
Hi, Tracy.
Who suggested, you know, you may or may not know, I do a regular Zoom call like this with her, and she suggested yesterday and previous that people should vote really on the candidates. You know, and she's focused on that, and
I agree.
you have to vote on who you're putting into power, because that person has to work for you. So I'll start this with Cory first. So if you're going to vote on the candidates, why should anyone in Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies vote for you?
Oh, this is really simple. You already have an MP that you can check the record on. You can go to the House of Commons, you can check out the parliamentary voting records. And I joke about it, but I'm serious about it too. When you have a candidate that is like one of those whack-a-mole boards, when you go to like one of the pizza places with your kids, and the only time his head pops up is when there's an election call, and you have to smack him back down again, and then he pops up in 4 years or 2 years later, that's what you've got. This MP has made $1.6 million just off the top of my head in the time that they've been in there. What do you got to show for it? If you were a business owner, let's go conservative here. Let's go. I'm the little monopoly guy with my top hat, pro-capitalist guy. I hire you to do a job. In 4 years, I come back and we do a performance review, which is exactly what this is. We are all applying for the same job. Bob has a record. You can look at that record. Has Bob served the poor people in this riding? No. Has Bob looked after the interests of the marginalized in this riding? No. Do we still have a huge drug crisis in this riding where more people are dying of drug overdose than they are of COVID? He hasn't even addressed that. He hasn't even come out publicly to show any leadership whatsoever. The only comments that I can find are the ones that are forced out of him in a public confrontation setting. And what he's saying is not cool, right? If you're an Indigenous woman and you want to be safe, you should stay on the reserve and get a job. I could not believe that when I heard that come out of that candidate's mouth. BTUs, no climate change. Right now, he's talking about the backcountry. He's talking about supporting farmers. Well, how the hell are you going to do that when the planet is burning, Bob? You can say all of these things, and then he's just going to disappear back into the woodwork again. What you're going to get from this guy is hard, solid work. I understand that the drug crisis could be considered by some people as a provincial, it's a health thing. There is nothing stopping me from going to Ottawa, talking to Jagmeet Singh when he's elected prime minister and saying, I need a dump truck full of money and I need it backed up to my riding right now because the province is on fire. Literally, climate, drug crisis, all of these things that the MP that was sitting before has left untended for 4 years. What kind of gardener is that? You're not pulling weeds out. You're not watering. You're not fertilizing. You're not doing the job as a steward of this region. And I promise and commit that I will be. And I will never block anybody. So if someone has a problem or an issue and they contact me, they're at least going to get my attention. I'm going to actively listen to them. I'm not going to dismiss them, right? I don't answer to a Christian group that gives me a checklist for donations when I'm running, because the NDP answers to no one except the voters. And that's everybody. I am not a special interest candidate. That's not what I'm about. I'm here to serve the needs of everybody in this riding. And all I'm asking for, after 50 years of conservative voting, change the sheets, folks. It's time to get somebody in there that's actually going to listen to you and try to help you, right? Not just disappear in the space between elections, not go to prayer meetings down in the States with President Trump. I have better things to do, like work for you here in Prince George.
You know, Audrey, oh, sorry, I cut you off there. She had more, but Audrey, same question. Why should people vote for you in Cariboo-Prince George?
Because everything starts here with me. I care. I really care about every single individual in this community. And I don't care if you're somebody who's unhoused, living in moccasin flats. I don't care if you are a business owner. I don't care if you are a homeowner or not. It doesn't matter what life you're living. I care. I think that we all bring something so special. And I want to make sure that everybody's voice is heard in Parliament. We have to do better. And I'm a fighter. I am courageous and resourceful. There is not a challenge that I have not risen to. I will always rise to the challenge. I am willing to question myself. I'm willing to listen to people. I'm willing to look at things from different angles and be creative. And I'm unwilling to compromise when it comes to sticking up for people and making sure that people are taken care of. That's a simple way to put it. That I don't know how else to put it. It's that simple. I'm here to fight for people, and I'm here to listen and project and make sure that everybody's voice is heard in Parliament. I'm going to go there and make a lot of noise. Right now, we have 338 seats to fill in Ottawa, 338 parliamentarians yelling over each other about and working together about advocating for their ridings. We need that. We deserve that here in Cariboo-Prince George. We deserve to have our voices at the table. And I will not hold back from bringing that to Parliament every single day I'm there. I will bring every ounce of myself to fight for this riding and to fight for the people that live here, regardless of what walk of life you're in. I think we have lives to save. I think we have people whose lives we can improve. And I think we have people we can protect. We need to make sure that everybody's looked out for.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, you can see I'm wearing her button.
Yeah, there you go.
You see, that's what her riding needs, is a leader that's going to take the time and that's going to give a crap. That's the same thing my riding needs. Somebody who's not an absent father, who's taken off and will not do anything until it comes time to get that childcare payment, right? We need 2 committed NDP party members in the north. You look across the border there, this will help with some stuff. We've got a really good federal MP that is working his butt off right now as an incumbent. That could happen here, kids. You could actually have someone that gives a damn about you and is working for you and can answer your questions about, well, how come I can't afford a house? What can we do to make it so that I can afford a house? You can come to Audrey and I, and you could be saying, well, how do we get some more healthcare professionals up here? Why isn't there a drug treatment facility in Fort St. John? Why aren't our members that are so important in this riding? Because let's face it, government exists for people. And in our 2 ridings, that has not been the case with the last sitting MP. It's time for a change. And I think we're all ready for better. I know I am.
Right on. That brings us up to time. We've been at it for 45 minutes, which is pretty good.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That went by really quick.
Yeah. We'll start with Cory. Just final comments to wrap up. What do you want to say to people who are watching this that you haven't already said?
Well, I don't know. I thought I kept it quite small.
Yeah.
I hardly touched on any issues. Let's just say this. I'm a dad. I'm a strong trade unionist. I believe in this region, we have so much opportunity here. If only there was some imagination shown, some leadership shown. We've already seen lots of people wanting to come up to Prince George in particular because of the housing prices here. And of course, this manufactured, money laundered government before us, making the houses so expensive down south that everybody's coming up here. We need to be looking 2 or 3 steps ahead. E-Day is the 20th. That's when it's going to happen. That's when your voice is going to be heard and counted. Please make sure that you're looking out for the future, because if you don't, you're going to be getting more of the same old chicken, and you're going to be so bored of that chicken. Spice it up a little bit, put some garnish on there. Maybe that garnish should be orange. That's what I'm thinking. Because if you keep doing things the way they are, your kids are going to be living in your basement for the next 10 years because they won't be able to afford a house. And the way things are going with the two parties that are currently running that have lied to you consistently since Confederation, you're not going to see any tax breaks from those people. The only person that's going to put more money in your pocket by taxing the super 1% richest and going after the people that are illegally setting their money overseas is Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. We're here for you. Vote for me, Cory Grizz Longley.
Okay. Audrey, some wrap-up comments, is that where?
You know, I feel so privileged to be running in this riding. This is a really special experience already. I actually feel emotional saying that out loud. I really do feel that I feel so privileged to be able to go and reach out to people, knock on people's doors, listen to your concerns, sometimes debate the issues, you know, sometimes disagree, sometimes we're on the same page. I feel incredibly privileged to be doing this. And I think it's important for people to understand too, that, you know, what Tracy said and what you said is correct, that it is about the person that you're electing to Parliament. And, you know, we've got the platform and we're going to talk about that a lot, the NDP platform. We're going to talk about our previous voting records as a party and all those things. But I want people to understand that this is a continuing conversation and that if I'm elected to Parliament, you know, the level of privilege I feel right now as a candidate, I can only imagine it's going to go through the roof. But I will not take that for granted. And I would never want this to be a relationship where, you know, I'm just coming to the riding to tell everybody what the NDP plans to do for you. I want to come to the riding to find out, what do you need? What's working for you? What's not working for you? This should be a continuous conversation. I want to go to government because we need to be a government and make a difference in people's lives. And I need to know what people want from me, what people need in their lives in order to do that. And while I'm running, I would love it if people reach out to me if I haven't come to your door yet, if I'm not already interacting with you on social media, or if I am and you want to have a more in-depth conversation. I hope people will reach out to me on my website, audreymckinnon.ndp.ca. My email address is audrey.mckinnon@ndp.ca. And I love talking to people. I love the people of this riding. So, you know, I'd be happy to hear from anybody who wants to reach out.
She totally does. And also keep in mind that we are sharing an office here because that's how fiscally responsible the NDP is. We are sharing an office, 1024 4th Ave, I believe is our address.
That's not it.
1224?
It's 1240.
1240, there you go. So we're both here and I would like to invite everybody. Audrey and I have offered our elite crack button making skills. We're going to hold an open house this afternoon. So I'd like to invite all the neighbors that would like to get to know Audrey better and myself better to come on down, and we'll give you a handcrafted vintage, and I only say vintage because I'm old, button that we've made for you. If you want to come down and get yourself a sign, Audrey has a whole bunch of them, and I would encourage you folks to get those signs out. Mine are coming, and hopefully we'll have those soon for the folks in my riding. And yeah, we want to invite you to come down. Just come talk to us. A lot of people say, oh, the NDP, crazy, blah, blah. No, we're regular folks. In fact, we're more regular than the other guys because we work. I go and I look at how much things are when I go buy groceries, right? I don't own 2 homes, right? We are working people and we have your backs, and we'd love for you guys to come down and visit us.
Super. Well, Audrey, I'm glad that you mentioned your email address there because we did get a comment from Joseph Charlie wanting your email address. So.
Oh yes, hi Joseph. Nice to see you.
So, yes, hopefully he will get in touch with you. But
awesome.
Anyways, I want to thank Audrey Mckinnon and Cory Longley for doing this interview today. Audrey, of course, is the NDP candidate for Cariboo-Prince George, and Cory is the NDP candidate for Prince George Peace River Northern Rockies. And we go to the polls on September 20th, and advanced polls are next week, I believe. They're coming up pretty quick. So doesn't matter who you vote for, get out and vote is the most important thing.
Amen. Yeah.
Here, here. I
Thank
mean,
you.
I'm slightly going to lean towards voting for me, but that's absolutely right. Have yourself heard, get your voice heard. You can actually go down to Elections Canada right now and write a name on a ballot if you feel that strongly about it. And I would encourage you to do that, especially since Elections Canada is reducing the opportunity for students to vote and Indigenous people to vote. You need to get out there as soon as you can, and you need to make your mark, as they say, for anybody that you think, personally, I'm going to endorse Audrey, and of course you should be voting for me, but do it now so your vote matters and your voice is heard.
And thank you, Bill, for hosting
Yes,
this.
thanks,
Really
Bill.
nice.
Super. Well, thank you very much. And we'll see you guys later. See you at the ballot box.
Yes, sir.
Bye.